Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to Guided Path Conversations. I'm Jan, your hostess, and today I wanted to talk about something that people are quietly worried about, and that is some signs that your employer or your company may be preparing for layoffs. So I have 10 signs that we're going to discuss. And, I'm not trying to create any kind of panic in anyone, but these are just things that you should be aware of and kind of have on your mind. Be observant, pay attention, and just, again, protect yourself, right? That's what we're here to talk about, our financial security, our financial future. And, all you see in the headlines these days is everything about how many layoffs we've had this year, so on and so forth. So let's break down the signs you should be looking for, and I do have some notes because there's 10 of them, and I don't have them all memorized, but I do want to share all of them because they are important. So the first one is budget cuts. Now, budget cuts are not necessarily a sign that there's going to be a layoff, but it could be a sign in conjunction with other things, okay? So when we talk about budget cuts, you might see things like, things that may have been free for you as an employee all of a sudden go away. Like maybe your company always provided coffee or had a little snack basket or I don't know, something like that. And all of a sudden, whoop, it's gone. You're kind of like, huh, that's weird. And another big sign under the budget category is hiring freezes. And again, your company might just try to not fill positions because headcount is very expensive. As a reminder, I'm a human resources professional. I've been doing this for 35 years. And I mean, it is one of the biggest costs of business is people. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. We have our salaries, our benefits, our workers' comp costs, our taxes. All those things play into, if you have a pension plan or an investment plan or 401k, something like that, and your company's matching, it does add up. So when they stop filling positions, that could be a sign that, they're doing some budget cuts, and why are they not filling these jobs all of a sudden? How about when your travel and training budgets get cost? That's like what I call low-hanging fruit. If you're going to start, trimming your budget, you can just stop travel and stop training. I don't agree with that, but it happens. It's a sign. And sometimes all of a sudden there's projects. Maybe that's new computer systems or software systems were coming into play, in your company. All of a sudden it gets cut. And you're like, huh, that's strange. And the last sign is when your finance department wants to, approve every single expense. Whereas in the past, maybe you had a limit. You could spend so much money without having to get an approval, whatever that may have been in your organization. Now all of a sudden, nope. Everything has to get approved and maybe justified. So sign number 1 is your budget cuts. And then another sign is when leadership starts to get vague. And what I mean by that is you have to kind of tune into what their tone is all of a sudden. And you'll see some changes like they say something like, no, there's no layoffs. Nothing's going to happen. And then a couple months later, maybe 1 or 2 people get laid off. And you're like, didn't you say no layoffs? What about when, you start to hear, they use phrases like, there's choppy waters ahead and we're heading into some strong headwinds. And you're like, ugh, that doesn't sound good. What does that mean? And maybe if you have any kind of company meetings, whether they're online, in person, whatever, they get a little vague, or maybe they just kind of stop and go away. Again, no need for panic, but just one of those things that you want to pay attention to and see what's happening. That in conjunction with your budget cuts, right? And you're like, interesting. How about when you're number 3, when your management acts different, or maybe your direct manager or supervisor is acting a little different than they normally do. They typically know before you will, obviously, when they're preparing for layoffs. Believe it or not, it's not like a CEO comes in one day and says, okay, we're cutting 100 people today. I mean, there's a lot of planning that goes involved with that. And I can tell you because I've been on that side of it before. And you just can't arbitrarily let people go. I mean, you could, but it could really hurt your operations, and you have to be strategic about it. So, your manager typically knows, and, it's very uncomfortable. I mean, unless you work for someone who's like soulless. And I mean, yes, there's people out there that are, jerks or whatever, but most managers are good people, right? And they have a heart and they care about you. So, if you normally have like one-on-one meetings with your manager and now all of a sudden they get they get cut. Or what if you've never had one-on-one meetings with your manager and now all of a sudden they want them? Like, that's kind of odd, right? Your manager can start acting a little more formally. Like, I mean, let's face it, we spend a lot of time at work. So our managers, they get to know us. They know about your families, know about this, that, what's going on in your life. Maybe they come in with their morning coffee and, shoot the, what with you for a few minutes. I mean, that's just human nature. We all do that. But when your manager is like kind of distancing themselves from you all of a sudden, that's another sign. They might seem a little more stressed because you're carrying a heavy burden when if you have a team of 20 people and you got to let 2 or 3 of them go, and you, the manager, sometimes have to make that decision because they just want to shrink your staff, or maybe it's half of them. I don't know. You're holding that in, and it is very difficult. So just watch the behavior and see how they're acting. Okay. The next one, number 4, is there's like these quiet reorganizations that start happening in your workplace. That's a very big indicator, right? Because now, like, you'll start to see things where they're shifting roles. Maybe they're combining some teams together. There might be new reporting relationships that are different, and there's really no explanation. They're just saying, oh yeah, we're just, streamlining, or, we're just seeing how we can be more efficient or something like that. They might start combining, like I said, departments, making new titles, things like that. So that usually happens before a layoff because, like I said, as a manager or as a management team, when you let these people go, you still have to, function with your company. Like, it still has to run, and you just can't let people go and then kind of go, oh, well, now what do we do? So that's kind of like a big preparation for how the company is going to run once they do the layoffs. So watch out for that one for sure. Number 5 is the workload changes. If you start to see a decrease in your workload, or you see, they start asking you to quantify your time, like what are you working on? Maybe they start shifting some of your responsibilities to a different department or to different people. Sorry, I've got a lot of gifts in the back and I just heard one of them fall. Maybe you're no longer invited to meetings that you used to go to. Oh, didn't see that one coming. So a lot of times what companies do is they reassign workloads. So not only do they maybe merge some departments together or putting new reporting relationships in, they start to reassign the work. Okay. Number 6, there's more performance pressure. If all of a sudden you start getting like these new metrics and they want you to quantify what you're doing or track your productivity, beware of that. Okay, because now they're looking at, is AI going to come in and take part of your responsibilities away? Or are they, maybe, or just different software that's going to come in? So, they're looking at how they can, justification as to who they're choosing to get separated. Okay, you might also see people like you might go from like a yearly evaluation to like maybe a quarterly or a monthly. And maybe you've always been a great performer, but now all of a sudden, like, you're not the best performer according to them. So watch out for those kinds of things. Number 7, is there any outsourcing happening? Are they doing that to save money? Obviously, are things going offshore? Are they bringing in contractors? If there's a hiring freeze, and maybe there's a lot of positions that they froze, but they still need some help, that's when you're going to go with temps and contractors. So when you start to see that happening, a little writing on the wall, especially if all this stuff is happening. Number 8, love number 8, the rumor mill. So the rumor mill starts to get a little crazy, and you'll feel like this energy shift within your organization. And you know how, you've worked wherever you've worked for a while, so you know what it's like when you walk through the doors every day. When you start to feel an energy shift, it always starts before a formal announcement. And like I said, you start to hear things like, oh, we're going to go in a new strategic direction, or there's more off-site leadership meetings going on. You're like, why are they gone again? If you're in a larger corporation and maybe you have different branches like throughout the state or in a region, and then people are calling you and they're like, hey, what's you guys filling any of your jobs down there or whatever, they're probably doing the same thing over there. And that's how the rumor mill starts. And as an HR professional, you always want to be ahead of the rumor mill as quickly as you can before it gets out of control. Sign number 9 is leadership turnover. If all of a sudden, pay attention to this one, when you see, executives who have been with your organization, or you hear about them, all of a sudden they've retired, and then this new team of people come in, or 1 or 2 new executives come in, that could be a big sign in the change of direction. When they bring in new executives, think about it this way. These people, they don't know you. They have no background, their heartstrings aren't going to be pulled because they don't know you from Adam, right? They come in and they're there to do the hard work of doing the layoffs and making it happen, and then moving the company forward. So you want to watch out when you start to get new top leadership happening. And lastly is strategy misalignment. If your department isn't tied to revenue, and I'm in human resources, we don't create any kind of income for a company. We spend it. But a finance department, they don't make money. Your tech department really probably doesn't create revenue. They're not out there selling the product. They're helping to support, just like HR support, finances support, but they're not the ones driving the revenue. You can become vulnerable if you're in one of these departments during cost-cutting times. Okay, so and just remember, when there's like this whole strategy misalignment and realignment, it's not about you personally. It's just about the company's priorities. Okay, and the company's trying to survive and still go and grow, and if you have stockholders, you're beholden to them as well. So, you do have value, right? So it isn't, it's hard not to take it personal, and I know because I've been there, but it isn't, about a personal attack on you specifically. So having said all that, what are some proactive steps you can take to prepare yourself in case this is happening, right? Always have your resume updated. I talked about that on another video. And, have other people look at it. Friends, family members, other trusted professionals. Just say, hey, you know what? I haven't updated my resume in a while, and I was just working on it, and, can you proofread it for me? Proofread. Please have somebody proofread your resume. Look at your LinkedIn profile. I know my profile's out there. I don't keep it all that updated, but I know I get a lot of job leads. I'm not interested right now, but it's nice to know that recruiters are using it, and it's probably AI, but whatever. And I do get job leads, so in my area, and remote jobs and things like that. So, so keep your profile up to date. There's a lot of content creators here on YouTube that can tell you how to do that real well. I'm not an expert in it at all. I watch them. So go ahead and do that and get it updated. while you're at work, and I think I mentioned this in my other video, document your achievements. Get a hold of your evals that you've had in the past. Make copies. They're yours. You're entitled to. Once you leave, you're not going to get them. So do it now. Document your achievements, because those are some of the things you want to put on your resume. And we'll make a video about resumes in the future. So make sure you do that. And you can quietly reconnect with your network and with other colleagues that you trust, and just say, hey, there's some rumblings going on in my organization. There may be layoffs. I'm not sure. What do you know what's happening out there? Or can you keep me in mind if you see an opportunity? And just kind of quietly get yourself, be prepared, be ahead of everybody else. Assess your job market. Look at your skill set. And again, we'll talk about this when we look at your resume. But look at your skill set, look at the market, see what's going on. Is there other companies downsizing? Are there, maybe somebody's coming into the market. So just look remotely. I mean, we all hear remotes going away. Yes, no, whatever. But look at, again, be ahead of the curve. So review your emergency savings. If you're not saving, start saving. Do it now. Every little bit helps. And secondly, I did post a video. It's going to be here or there. And it was preparing your four walls for potential job loss. So go back and look at that, because that talks a little bit more about the financial end of it. So again, in closing, remember that layoffs are a business decision. It's not necessarily a personal decision. It's not about your talent or your worth. Okay? You just want to be aware so that you can have the power is more on your side and the ball is in your court, so to speak, and you're being a little more strategic about what your plan is. And go ahead and write that plan out. If you go into work on Monday and that inevitable meeting happens, because there is going to be a meeting, whether it's with a group or if it's just one-on-ones, you don't want to come out of there like shell-shocked. You want to say, not happy about it. I'll accept it, and institute your plan immediately. Because you don't know, are they going to, so many scenarios, right? They can say, your services are no longer needed. Here's your severance package. And you might walk out the door right then, because I've done that. But I've also downsized departments where they still had to work out, like 6 months when I was in the banking industry. It was a slow process of downsizing until that department went to a different part of the state. So at least those employees knew, they had 6 months, and then they got their severance. So there's so many different scenarios, but again, you're prepared and the power is in your court. So I hope that you find this helpful. Thanks for tuning in today. I'll be back in a few days. I'm going to talk about with my simpler life, and hopefully this will help you too, especially if you're going to go through a downsizing. I want to talk about how to simplify your food plan. Not shopping frugally, because there's a lot of content creators on here that are great and I learn from them, but just about simplifying when you're simplifying your life, simplifying your food plan. I'm going to start there. So thanks again. We'll chat soon. Take care.